10 years ago, in 2014, there was an entire shill campaign for the release of Destiny. The most disappointing game of that decade, right? Like, no, you just got hyped up too much. It's going to be one of the best games ever. Just wait and see. Game journals religiously tried to defend Destiny throughout that entire launch period and beyond. They legit really wanted this game to succeed. They threw all of their weight behind it. They tried every possible trick. Like, the next update will fix everything, I swear. Like, they did everything they could to try to pass off Destiny as some masterpiece of game design, something that you could spend endless amounts of time revisiting and playing and enjoying. And it was never true, but Bungie at the time had this very religious, very devoted audience of people who would just consume whatever slop they put out, right? These are the people who were unfortunate enough to grow up with Halo, who believed that Halo was some innovative FPS title. It wasn't. These are the people who thought that Bungie was one of the best developers in history because they put out Halo. Like what? What? Are you kidding? Again, it was a complete joke then, for sure. But seeing how Bungie has been laying off people constantly over the past couple of years. There's been some talk the CEO has bought something like $2 million worth of cars in the past several years. He sold out to Sony and spent the money on vintage cars. And people are flipping out about it. Oh, how could you do this to the employees? This is Bungie, right? They were always like this. People really thought that, again, I really want you to go through, the history of Bungie and really stop and think to yourself, this is the studio that I worship. This is the studio that I love. This is the studio that I am obsessed with. They broke off from Microsoft because, we want to pursue our own IPs. We're too creative to be owned by Microsoft. So they become third party. They strike a deal with Activision. They put out Destiny, one of the worst things ever produced. They get out of the Activision deal. They somehow gaslight their audience into thinking Activision was behind everything wrong with the original Destiny release. They weren't. They're independent for a bit. They own Destiny, but oh no, the money's running out. So what do? They sell out to Sony in the single worst video game acquisition deal I have ever seen in my life. Fuck that fat guy on Rekieta Law who tried to say this was some deep master plan or something. It was stupid and everybody knew it. The worst video game acquisition I've ever seen in my life. And they produce nothing of value, right? It's been several years now, I think, since the acquisition. And all Bungie has been doing is firing people, putting out lackluster expansions, driving away their very loyal fan base and calling them bigots and all sorts of nasty names, for daring to think that LGBTQ people are disgusting. Which is a factual, objective truth, right? They were doing everything they could to run their business into the ground. And yeah. It does feel like the chickens are finally coming home to roost, right? I remember when I was a stupid blogger, blogging about this, Destiny is a failure. Again, I was laughed at, I was ignored, and look who was completely right. Look who's sitting in a house, with a book on the way, with a successful YouTube channel, with a great personal life, Harmon Smith, the person who has been obsessively for the past 10 years telling you that, Destiny is not very good. That should not have been some major controversial opinion. That should not have been considered a hot take. But for that entire period, even now, I think people don't like admitting this. No, Bungie can come back. They can recover. They're going to be good again. When's it going to happen? Well, not only when were they ever good? It's my genuine answer. You've spent 25 years of your life, well, not quite 25, more 23, 23 years of your life obsessing over the developers that made Halo, right? You know, when Rareware got acquired by Microsoft, right? Did I sit here and just be like, oh, they're gonna be putting good bangers for Xbox now? Like, no. Like, everybody knew it was going to destroy the company, and that's exactly what it did, right? Why are Bungie fans so unwilling to acknowledge that Bungie is a poorly managed developer that has never produced anything good? They don't have talent. They've been driving people away. Like, again, I need to emphasize this again, too. People want to blame DEI for this, and I am so fed up with this because this has nothing to do with DEI. This is before even Gamergate took off. You know, DEI wasn't even a thing until 2018, right? Like, again, developers have always been putting out lazy, uninspired cash grab games because they think they can get away with it. You know, Halo 2 didn't even have an ending. Like, oh, I'm going to finish the fight. Finish it when? In Halo 3? Like it was appalling. Appalling just how many people tried to tell us that, like, Bungie was, like, this major studio, right? Like, the best ever in gaming, when nobody who likes Bungie has ever picked up a Nintendo controller. You know, nobody who plays Bungie games even knows what, like, Fire Emblem is. You know, nobody who plays Bungie, like, even knows how much better, like, the Rareware era of, like, GoldenEye was, right? You know, Perfect Dark, right? You know, like, whenever I bring this stuff up, like, people try laughing at me, like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But no, it is true. I know very well what I'm talking about, which is why I was able to call it when it happened 10 years ago, that Bungie was a sinking ship, even then. Like, even when Halo 3 came out, I was saying this. Because even back then, you know, people were already getting tired of Halo. And people really weaponized that. Like, oh, them making a new IP, like, really shows how devoted Bungie is to making their own thing. But what they made is basically the same thing as what they had to begin with. You know, a generic sci-fi shooter. Like, oh, but it has more fantasy elements, though. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. Again, Destiny is a complete failure. Halo is a complete failure. Bungie as a whole is done. This is just another major Harmon Smith W. Right? Again, like, every company that isn't Nintendo is bad. You know, I've been saying this for 20 years now. You know, ever since I was, watching X-Play, like, watching retards like Adam Sessler try to convince you that Nintendo would soon go out of business, like, I've been telling it like it is for years now. Nintendo isn't going anywhere, and the competition is slowly going to peter out and become irrelevant over the next several decades, right? Nintendo has won the console war a long time ago, and we're only waiting for the rest of the industry to catch up to that reality.